One thing that's true for all moms, we have a lot of stories to tell. Some are silly, some are gross, some bring us to tears. With each story that's shared, another mom feels a little less alone. So join us as we laugh, learn, and grow together. It's the iMom Podcast. Welcome to this week's episode of the iMom Podcast. My name is Abby. I'm with Chloe and Megan and Susan. And this week's episode is about helping your child handle heartache or a hard breakup. And the heartache queen, causing them, not usually getting them, Megan.
Hardly. I had plenty of boys that rejected me throughout my years, mainly in middle school. So that's fine. So I dated someone for 4 years in college. I met him my first night of college, actually the summer before my freshman year, because Florida had this thing called Summer Bee. And so we dated for a really long time. And after we graduated, there was kind of like some question of what we were going to do. And we kind of went back and forth on like breaking up, staying together, breaking up, getting back together. And it was just so back and forth for a long time, especially because then I moved to another city for my job. And he was in a different place. So it was kind of distance at the same time. And it was just really hard to let go. We were just so close and such good friends. And I think we really cared for each other, but I think we both knew it wasn't going to work in the long run. But anywho, we were going back and forth after we graduated. And I was going on a trip with my family over the 4th of July, happened to be in his hometown because he kind of lives in a, like, I don't want to say the place, but it's kind of like a resorty area. And so I was going to be like in his hometown where he lived. And so we were planning to see each other, which probably wasn't the best thing. And then sure enough, through social media, I saw that, I don't know if he was with this other girl or what was going on. I mean, there was definitely something going on between them based on this picture. Let me just say that. So I saw it and I just kind of, I don't know if I texted him or called him and I was like, hey, what's going on? I thought, we were planning to see each other, blah, blah. But it was just confirmation to me that like, okay, he was moving on. I needed to move on. And I think it was hard because in my mind, I didn't know that. And technically we weren't together. So it's not like he was cheating on me or anything, but it felt like that. And It felt like I had been kind of misled. But I think it was just confirmation to me of like, okay, we're done. Like we need to be done. Obviously he's moving on and I need to too. And so it was really hard because, I mean, if you date someone for 4 years, I mean, it was just really tough to be like, okay, we're like, this is the final, it's over, it's done. And especially to kind of have to have it happen that way was really tough because I was like kind of heartbroken. So that was a tough situation, but I think my parents, especially my mom, are really great at being like, you've been waffling back and forth on this forever. This is what you needed to see to let it go. It's done. So they were great at kind of walking me through that. And it was what was for the best.
Did you go to your mom or Susan, were you just kind of observing everything?
Oh, I was like sobbing and I'm not a crier. Like I'm not a crier. And I saw it while we were there in his hometown and I was like planning to see him the next day. And I was like, oh my gosh,
I think,
so.
I think, the blessing, the God ordained part of this was that Megan and I had conversations for an entire year, even her senior year, that things were not getting better between them. They were arguing more and they just kind of knew it. But again, they were still such good friends and all their friends were friends.
Yeah,
and so they were doing that waffling. So we had many conversations about don't be the frog in the pot where it just gets worse and worse. And then after, when she graduated, we had conversations like it wouldn't, your only choice forward is marriage at this point. Yeah. You guys have dated a long time. You're now well into your adulthood. And I said, and it's not going to get better with that. So is there a way forward? No, not really. Mm-hmm. And so fortunately, she was with us when this happened, which is very unusual because she was living in a different state at the time. We had just happened to get together for the holiday. Wow. And so I used that with her even. I said, did God want both of us to see this so that I could help you remember this? You have to remember this because he was not truthful about the situation. And that's what really hurt her, is that he kind of wasn't truthful about it.
Yeah. I don't think that, like, when I think of like one of my first breakups that hurt, I was in ninth grade, and I remember laying on my bed listening to Bon Jovi's Greatest Hits and crying. And I didn't want my parents to know. Like, I didn't want to talk to my parents about it. It wasn't, I just didn't want to. And so I think it's hard for parents to like want to walk their child through this and want to offer the right words when your kid's maybe embarrassed or sad or, just being private about it. I think that just adds an element of, oh, how do I help my child? Chloe, did you ever?
I had a really similar situation happen where I was with my dad. It was the night before a recruiting camp for one of the colleges. Actually, the college I ended up going to play soccer. And I had found out something about my boyfriend. And I really didn't want to tell my dad because I didn't want my dad to think of my boyfriend differently.
Yeah.
So I wanted to hide it. But as I've shared on this podcast, I can be very emotional, and my dad knew something was wrong. So we did end up talking about it. And, my dad did a really good job because I did date this guy for like a year and a half after that. And my dad did a really good job of like not making it about him, making it about me. And I actually played really, really well the next day. So it was like God really like worked it out. But I hear what you're saying. Like, I didn't want to talk to my dad about it because I was dealing with processing the news myself and wanting to I still wanted to protect this guy even though he wasn't treating me right. It's hard. I'm sure it's hard as a parent to know how to step in a way where your kid isn't going to shut you out. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you walk that line?
Well, first, I'm always praying that God will help me to see what I need to see. And I don't ever want to miss seeing something. So they kind of heard that from me before. Why did this happen now? So I think, I don't know, Megan, why did you tell me? We just talk.
Yeah. And it had been going on. Well, we dated for so long, one, and then two, the breaking up and getting back together, that whole saga had gone on for like a long time. And so I think I was constantly asking you and trying to figure out what I should do because like, I didn't want to break up with him, but I like felt like it was time but it's hard to let go of something when you've been together for that long. And so I think that was a piece of it was like, I needed to talk to someone about it because I just kept mentally going back and forth in my head. But I think one of the things that you did a really good job of was like, what kind of life do you want? Like making me think more in the future than making me want to stay in the here and now, because I think I was holding on to something that I knew I needed to let go and it wasn't going to work out long term, but I was having a really hard time visualizing what it would be like long term. And so I think just you having me think like, do you want to be married to this type of person? Do you want to have this type of life? Because this is like the direction he's heading. And it made me realize, okay, no, that's not how I envision my life, which I think was really important because I think I was in love with him and that's all I could see at the time was, this is what I want right now.
That takes such maturity for you to be able to accept that future thinking and not just what you were feeling at the moment.
Yeah. I think too, knowing Megan as I did, Megan is so loyal. And I knew this was a loyalty problem. This was not, this is my forever person. This was a loyalty. She's super loyal to her friends, and it is her gift. And it is also then in a situation like this really hard because she had a hard time saying no. And he did keep pursuing her. And so that was the other thing. It was hard, is he did, and then she'd feel bad.
Mm-hmm. I think that a lot of kids don't talk to their parents about it. Chloe, sort of what you said reminded me. I also didn't want to talk to my mom about it because my mom was a teacher in my high school. And so I think knowing that your parents are going to see this boy again, and for you, same situation, and maybe Megan and Susan, he was far enough removed that you knew, Megan, that she was not going to have to interact with him or whatever. Like, there's so much closeness in high school, like in our communities, like with families and school situations, that sometimes inviting your parents into that heartache invites them into the drama, and it's hard for them to stay, to not say something or not to not think badly about that kid or whatever. I think that's also dangerous.
And that's a great point, because I also knew that even if my mom did see him or whatever it might be, she would act normal and cordial and whatever. I knew if I told my dad certain things that like it would not go well if he saw him. So I think just like knowing your different parents too was a big difference of like what information would I tell them because I knew they could handle it versus what I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I would say this is not easy to do. So if I say it, don't think it was easy for me. But I always tried to teach all of my kids, the people they were dating as people. I tried to get to know them. I tried to love on them. I tried to make them know that we would always be friends, not that they were friends with a parent, but you know what I mean? I would always, and so we always had them over, and I wanted my kids to treat them like people. So we've told that story before about burning bridges. We're not going to burn bridges.
Right,
you're too young to really probably end up marrying this person. So at the end of it, you need to be friends, and we can't burn a bridge. Because you're right. In a small, we don't live in that small of a community, but the high school world is small. I would see them. I know their parents. And so we got to do it right.
Yep. So other ways right and wrong way to react to a breakup. If you're the parent of a child who goes through a breakup, don't reach out to the ex. I have a friend who broke up with his girlfriend, and his mom took it worse than he did and like reached out to her and still wanted to buy Christmas presents. And his dad finally stepped in and was like, no, you need to break up with her now too. Like this needs to be over.
We're not that close.
No. Another idea is to tell your teen to take some space, just like you probably shouldn't reach out to her and text her. Neither should your son or your daughter. Especially if they go to the same school, finding ways to find other weekend activities, maybe take them on a little weekend getaway somewhere nearby, or encourage more time together. I think it's a great excuse for you to spend more time with them.
That's a good tip.
Yeah. Look at how much time they spend on social media, because that's not ever going to lead to anything healthy after a breakup, like you said, Megan. And this kind of goes into the thing you were just saying, Susan, about burning bridges. Remind him not to sink the ship, meaning don't take down every other part of your life because you're going through a breakup. I was talking with one of our coworkers here who went through a breakup, and he said, this is a part of my life that hurts and that is going badly, but I've got a lot of other things that are good and that are going well. And so I can't let all those other things suffer because of this part. And so as a parent, you can remind your child, you're in line for a scholarship to this school. Don't not go to that school because she's planning on going to that school. It's like you have to show them the relationship is one part of their life.
I have on that. That happened to me when my high school boyfriend and I broke up. We were both committed to go to the same school to play soccer. And my mom, I was like, what do I do? And my parents were like, you go to that school. This is your life. This is what you've always wanted to do. And because of that, he went a year before me, and all the girls on my team saw him cheat on me multiple times and were able to tell me. And that's when we broke up. Yeah. Like for good. Like, because we did that on and off, and off. Like, and he ended up going to a different school when I went to that school. Like, God always works it out. And I'm so thankful my parents were like, nope, this is your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also think not using the cliches of like, oh, there's plenty of fish in the sea. I mean, this hurts for them. It's hard.
No. And I tell my kids, you're okay. That's great. I understand. And that's good. But you're not going to rebound.
Oh, yeah.
Because that hurts the other person too. You owe them the respect of, like you said, take space, but take space. You don't need to date for a little while. Right. You don't need to turn around and get another boyfriend or something.
Good.
I was going to ask that. Yeah. That was going to be my next question. Like, how do you then lay down, like put your foot down and say, all right.
Unless it's your future husband, and then it's fine.
Yeah. How long did Megan wait?
That wasn't a rebound. There was time in between.
That was happenstance. I'm sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah. But, what if they do want to move on quickly? How do you step in? Especially if they're like 16, 17, if it's a 14-year-old, that's another story. But like if they're 17 years old and they've broken up and they want to move on,
Yeah.
Jumping in and out of relationships is not a mature, wise idea because it just shows that, oh, are you that fickle that you can leave that one and all of a sudden you're madly in love with this one? Well, you're going to end up in the same place. It's just, okay, date a bunch of different. My mother-in-law, Megan's grandmother, used to say, "What? You're just going out with one person? I used to have 3 dates in a day." She'd say,
I had one boyfriend. She was so
that.
confused. She was
Why
like,
have
that's
a
silly.
boyfriend?
Why would you date one person? I was like,
No,
oh my
she'd say,
God.
I'd have one for brunch before the game. I'd have a game date, and then I'd have a party date that night. Why tie yourself down?
Oh my god.
Love her.
I mean,
Yes. Yes.
So what do you do then if your child goes through a breakup and you think that he or she is being over dramatic and maybe making it worse? Is there a way to say respectfully and not minimizing the feelings and say, I think that you need to take a deep breath and is there such thing as over dramatic or are they feeling what they're feeling?
Depends on where they are on the Enneagram.
Yeah, that's true.
And if they're being disrespectful. Like one time I was extremely disrespectful to my mom when I was going through a breakup and she was like, I understand you're hurting, but you can't be mean to me.
Yes. I think the other thing you do have to watch for is that they're like sabotaging the ex. Just getting their friends to be mean.
There's a lot of like retaliation that goes on.
That's just not healthy.
Yep. So breakups today obviously are different than they were when, quote, we were kids, except for Chloe. So that's what I was telling you earlier.
Yeah.
And Megan's only 4 years older than Chloe.
So much changed.
But now there's social media, and I mean, all the kids, everybody's on it. Pew Research Center survey on technology. They did one on technology and teen breakups, and there are so many aspects to the breakup that are beyond what we had to deal with 20 years ago. Like, do you block the person? When do you change your status? Do you delete photos?
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
What do you do if the other person shares personal stuff or is bitter and talks bad about you? How do you handle other people being nosy and asking about the breakup or then gossiping about it? Like, how do we help our kids when they're dealing with aspects of a breakup that we never had to?
Yeah.
Never.
I think if you're posting a lot about your relationship online, then you're doing it for the public fame. And so you can expect a very public breakup. I mean, that's just the way it goes. So why are you changing your status to begin with? I mean, your friends know you're going out. Does the world need to know you're going out? So again, there's certain types of people and kids who thrive on the attention of social media. And if you have one of those children, you've got to start coaching very early. And they're usually the more popular, outgoing, extroverted kids.
Do you think more kids date today than I mean, this is just kind of a big thought. I don't think we have like statistics on the, do more kids date today than they did 25, 30 years ago because of social media, because there is the ability to tell everybody they're dating?
Are you saying dating or going out? Like
my
mother-in-law, they dated.
I feel like people don't date at all anymore.
I agree.
Right.
At all.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Feel
what
like
do they do?
Talk or like they'll like, I don't know, not
Hook up.
Yeah. Not have those consistent relationship, not going steady, as they say.
Yeah. I think dating is gone. Like dating is what my mother-in-law did.
Okay,
dating is what we did. Somebody had to actually call and ask you out.
Yeah, but this Pew Research Center survey was about breakups. So what are you breaking up with if you're not dating?
They're just in a relationship all of a sudden.
So if you have pictures together, you and a guy, we've been dating, or we've been fickling for
hanging out, talking. We've
for
been
all
talking
these months, and I posted all these pictures. Then when things go south, do you delete the pictures? Like, there's still that aspect of how do you do you remove that relationship from your digital presence?
So true. Well, because you don't want to seem unavailable to a new person.
Right.
It's really complicated.
And that's why you wait to let your kids on social media.
Yes. Back to recall.
Because truthfully, they're just not mature enough to handle the relationships.
Yeah. And like, it's just so, and like Megan, what you experienced, like that is a really heartbreaking thing when you see your ex post a picture with a new person for the first time. It's like,
Yeah.
Oh, no, he didn't post it. The
It
girl
was
did.
her.
Well, okay, yeah.
So he wasn't ready for it, but the girl posted it.
I mean,
She
but even
found
that,
it.
like you have access to what the person's doing when you're not around. And
Right.
Yeah.
it's heartbreaking. Yeah.
Well, and then that adds a whole nother level of like, so say you were in high school and this all went down in high school and that girl knew you. She posts the picture with your ex, like is she doing that on purpose? Is she
Correct.
trying to?
Correct.
So
She was trying to accelerate the relationship.
Oh, yikes.
yeah. Oof. All right. So takeaways for moms. We will again post the how to pray for your teenager, an article about how to help your teenager through a breakup, and these statistics. This was a really insightful, like 10 pages on research about kids and technology, but breakups and all that. But I think that, making yourself available and saying, I'm here to talk. If you want to talk, no judgment. If you need some advice, you can ask. Otherwise, I'm just here to listen. I think that's really I think just being there,
And I would say this, if you have a more introverted child who's really not dating or doing all this, just know you still have to have the conversations because they're watching everybody else.
Oh, that's good.
And then what they see becomes the norm when it's really not the norm. I mean, it is the norm, but it's not right.
Right. Kind of like in our dating episode, we were talking about how, like, if they don't want to date, that doesn't make them weird. That's fine. They just don't want to date.
Or they're just too shy and they don't know how to play this crazy game that everybody's playing.
Yeah. I'll tell a quick story about like my other heartbreak experience, which was much later in life. After my divorce, I accepted a date with a guy and he stood me up. Oh. And it was my first time in my life ever being stood up. And it was my first date after my divorce. Oh. And it was way too soon. Yeah. It was like, to say, like Susan and Megan, you guys talked about like God's timing and just, whatever. It was 100% God protecting me from dating a guy that I was not supposed to go out with. Like,
but still, that hurts.
Yeah, preparing.
Did you ever find out why he like never showed up, or like did he have a good excuse or anything?
He gave me excuses, and I was so blind and like dumb. I just kept on thinking, oh, okay, well, I'll drive there, then I'll drive to this part of town to make it easier. Like when you do get home, like it was so stupid. Like, Abby, come on, And I was with a friend. Like she ended up coming and meeting up with me, and it was like 3 hours after we were supposed to meet up, he and I. And I looked across and I was like, he's not coming. And she goes, he's not coming.
Oh, at least she was with you.
Well, and so the next morning, and I was living with my parents. And so, like, I mean, I'm at like an emotional low, right? So I walk out to the kitchen, and my dad / landlord is there. And he's like, so how did it go? And I could like just cry talking about it now. He goes, how did it go? I go, he stood me up. And he just put his arms out and I hugged him, and that was the end of it. So, you don't have to always have the right words. Sometimes
just so listeners, Abby's tearing up now.
Yes. Anyway, tell us how you help a child through a breakup, either what you went through as a teen or how you handled watching your child go through one. And there's a link to the email in the show notes. And you'll also find a printable there, like I said, about how to pray for your teen. Thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to the iMom podcast. iMom is the motherhood program of the nonprofit organization Family First. Along with our fatherhood program, All Pro Dad, we exist to help you love your family well. Subscribe to our daily email, the iMom Minute, by going to imom.com/subscribe and get tons of great ideas, insight, and inspiration. The iMom podcast is hosted by me, Abby Watts, along with Susan Merrill, Megan Tigner, and Chloe Blumenthal.